Good morning, it's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony Astrology up on the hill. It's Sunday morning, February 22nd. We're going to do the astrology for the final week of February 2026. So we are sitting in between eclipses. We had the solar eclipse at 29 degrees Aquarius last week, and next week we're going to have the total lunar eclipse in Virgo, but we'll talk about that next week. So we're sitting in this portal in between eclipses, which is a very powerful time. It's a time of transition. It's like the train tracks shifting, right? So whatever track we were on, all of a sudden we're now on a different track. So we'll start seeing the effects of that track change over the coming months, okay? And as we sit here, we're going to see a reignition of last week's solar eclipse with Mars making some aspects that the sun made with that eclipse, which we'll get to. And we're watching the extension of Mercury's work in Pisces. Mercury is slowing down as we speak, and on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on your time zone, Mercury turns retrograde at about 22 degrees Pisces, okay? And so it's out ahead of the personal planets right now. By the time we get to the end of the week, it's going to pass the baton as it turns retrograde, and it'll pass the baton to Venus. So Venus will take the lead. Venus is exalted in Pisces, so it's a great position for Venus to be out ahead of the personal planets in its exaltation sign where it expresses itself the best. And so Mercury's kind of handing over its notes, the baton of notes, so that Venus can kind of take over. And so today, on the 22nd, we actually have Venus trining Jupiter. Okay, so Mercury started the trine of Jupiter, and that's going to be ongoing until the end of March. Really, it's kind of with us till the end of March. And now we have Venus right behind Mercury. That'll be followed by the Sun and Mars eventually over the next couple of weeks. Okay, and this Venus-Jupiter, it's two benefics, as they're known in astrology, forming a trine, which is also considered a benefic aspect. Okay, so it's a very light energy, and it really has to do with this continuation of growth because we're moving through the societal transformation, and so we've got to be where we need to be on a personal level to be able to handle that. And so just to review and reiterate where we're at now societally, so we entered the 1 year at the start of 2026, so we're ready to start something. Last week, the solar eclipse in Aquarius ushered in the year of the fire horse in Chinese astrology. So the engine is turned on, it's revving, it's ready to go. Then, just a couple days ago, we had the peak of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So we are on the other side of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries. Again, an ignition point, a clean slate, huge ramifications for societal evolution. And these only happen once every 36 years. We can go back to like 1846, 1882, 1917, 1952, and 1989, the most recent one. Instead of going back through all of them, which I can do in an upcoming live video, I can go over that. But we're going to focus on just what's happening now in the last one, just for comparison. And even though it takes, we just entered this new phase of societal evolution, and we don't have another Saturn-Neptune conjunction until 2061. So we have 36 years or so, 35, 36 years for this to play out, to unfold, for the personal responsibility to come back to the individual. That's that Saturn in Aries, and for a sense of, Neptune in Aries being our whole selves coming in. And that's, again, going back to the idea of Mercury trining Jupiter over this whole month coming up, and Venus now trining Jupiter today. It's that ongoing expansion to handle our whole selves in the societal evolution. And just to give you an example of, how quickly things can change, even though we have 35 years for things to completely unfold. Go back to 1989. That was, again, the end of the Iron Curtain. The Berlin Wall came down. The divide between the left and, the East and the West, left and the right, fell. Okay. And it immediately opened up this new phase of globalism. And you can look back at the dates yourself. It's kind of interesting. November 8th, 1989 was when the wall started falling. November 9th, the next day, this is when Margaret Thatcher, who I think was like Prime Minister of Great Britain at that time, she gave one of the first speeches talking about a reason for globalized power. And that reason was climate change, okay? And so that was like one of the first introductions to the lexicon of public awareness of that issue, okay? And again, that just serves as the foundational reason for globalized power. And that's really what she was talking about. One day after the wall fell, and it was known that, dividing the world was no longer a way to keep power over people. Now we've got to manipulate people into believing that we need to globalize and consolidate power so that we save ourselves and save the earth, right? That was the concept. Now that globalization is collapsing before we speak. And so all that consolidation of corporations and governments and all the corruption that has happened since that 1989, and it occurred before that, but it really ramped up here since 1989. And what's coming through with the files and other things, and there's arrests, and that's that personal accountability, Saturn and Aries, so you're getting some arrests of actual high-level people like Prince Andrew, for example. And but that's just like the very, very tip of the iceberg, just scratching the surface about what's really happened in those higher echelons of power. And so that's collapsing in real time. And people are basically fed up with it. And so we're taking our responsibility back. We're not externalizing our power anymore. We're not externalizing authority anymore. We're all sovereignly connected to source as individuals. And that's really what Saturn, Neptune conjunction in Aries has to do with, is coming back to that awareness that no matter who you are, no matter what your place in society is, you are a sovereignly connected being, and your whole self deserves to be here. And those power structures that have basically made that difficult to happen are what are fading away. And you're seeing that with, again, the fall of politicians, the fall of celebrities. I mean, what celebrity gathering like Oscars and Emmys and what hasn't lost ratings consistently year to year over the last several years? People are fed up with the idea of celebrities telling them what they're supposed to believe, getting involved in politics, etc. So people are really coming into themselves. And with the technology that we have to connect, we don't really need that mechanism for connection. We don't have to go up and around. We just go right to each other. And that's what Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, this phase, is going to build more and more as we move through the coming decades. Okay? And so also it's the fall of gurus. Like if you've seen like Deepak Chopra, whatever. But any kind of guru, any kind of externalization of power, that's falling away. And so I like to think of it as the end of the guru and the start of the YOUru, right? End of the guru, start of the YOUru. So really coming into our inner YOUru, our divinely connected sovereign essence. And that is the place from which we can actually create harmony with others. Okay, so that's where we're at. Again, we're having to expand ourselves. This whole Mercury retrograde that's coming up here in Pisces, it'll start Wednesday or Thursday, depending on your time zone. It's going to go all the way until March 20th, which is when it'll turn direct. And that is going to be the same day as the equinox. That's the start of the astrological new year. So energetically, that's really the start of things. So we're still in this cleanup, this processing, this reorientation phase on a personal level, so we can be expanded enough to hold our whole selves in this new societal transformation that we're in the midst of, that's happening right in front of our eyes. Okay, and along with that, last week's solar eclipse is getting stimulated by Mars. So Mars is making some aspects. So like today, for example, Mars is sextiling Chiron. Mars is in Aquarius, sextiling Chiron and Aries. Chiron and Aries since 2018 really challenged us to have to trust ourselves and to see ourselves as capable. Okay, Mars sextile Chiron right now, it's an opportunity to take a little action outside our own box that we wouldn't normally take, that challenges us, challenges our courage, challenges our confidence in ourselves, and go for it. So if there's something to do, I would say go for it at this point. Okay, and it's happening with Venus trining Jupiter, so we are expanded enough to hold a new expression of ourselves. So it's perfect timing. At the end of the week, this is when Mercury is going to be retrograde, very slowly moving, but it's going to hand that baton of all the notes that it's taken in Pisces to Venus to take over, exalted Venus heading the way. But also, Mars will square Uranus and Taurus before it hits the actual eclipse point from last week's eclipse, and the sun will join the North Node in Pisces. So during that eclipse, we had the sun squaring Uranus, okay, and then we had Venus on the North Node. So it's a reiteration of those energies with different players. But the point is, it's that same shake-up energy from that eclipse, but now in a new form. It's kind of a shake-up that's saying, here's some, what inspired action are we going to take as a result of that shake-up? And understanding that, yes, our soul is aligned with where we're headed from now. So we'll leave it at that. It's a lot to take in, but just remember, next week we'll talk about the total lunar eclipse in Virgo. But for now, just realize we're in this little eclipse portal. We are expanding to hold ourselves, and we're going to be ready to go, especially once Mercury turns direct here on March 20th with the equinox. Any questions, let me know. If you want to look at your personal chart, also let me know. We could do personal readings. Other than that, enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.